This is the voice of the New York Football Giants, Bob Papa, and you are listening to the best throughout Europe, the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast, proudly as always in association with Andy's Man Club. Lads, remember, it is okay to talk. In this episode, we are a duo, the rare duo episodes, despite there being five of us, and we are 100% British, but as always, 100% Giants. Bit of an odd one as well, I guess, with content-wise this week, because it's our only live show of the week, as everyone knows. You know, bye weeks tend to be the time where we take a little break from our 2 a week and only do the one, give ourselves a little time to recharge batteries, especially with a bye week that's as late as this one. But there's also kind of a lot to look at and not a lot to look at in the same breath. You know, we're looking at a Patriots game that was disappointing for all, especially those who decided to stay up in the early hours to watch it. A Joe Schoen press conference that was mostly a bit of a damp squib, really, apart from maybe Pat Leonard being, the hero we all needed at the time, pushing for a little bit more than what we were getting. We had the debut of episode 1 of Hard Knocks NFC East last night that featured the Giants in bits. Don't go into it thinking it's going to be the same as we had last season with Hard Knocks. This is going to be very much a focus on all four teams, and with us being the poorest of the four by a long mile, I would imagine that we're not going to get as much airtime as the other three as it goes through, unless there's more funny things to talk about, which, it's the Giants. There always could be. And then, Mayo, you are going to don your GM hat, swap the cap you've got on now for the GM hat, and fix your franchise fix the franchise during the bye week, and just kind of have a look at the things that you would maybe do if you had the opportunity. But how are you, buddy? You good?
Yeah, really good. It's fun. Everyone else is on a bye week. We got the duty to hold the fort down, and maybe we're doing the coaching search. That's why we've got to stay around, right?
Yeah, we've been left in the building. It's like the reverse of when the key card goes on and you can't open the door. We've got the bit where we can't get out of the building.
Yeah.
Steve has said fix your franchise. Is it a 2-hour episode? We hope not, Steve, but it's the only episode of the week, so we'll go for as long as we need to go. Obviously, before we begin, if you're watching on YouTube, X, Facebook, get involved in the comments, give this video a like, subscribe if you aren't already, hit the notification bell, all that lovely stuff. Follow us on the socials. Aaron, how many stars do those audio listeners need to give us?
5
stars. Thank you very much. And a salute to Mark, who is in the comments as well, as always. Good lad is Mark. Anybody who is going over to a game at any point, make sure you get in touch with Mark. He's a good lad. He's got a good little crew out there, and they'll look after you outside the game. I guess we'll get straight into the review side of things for the Patriots game, which is obviously a few days ago now. The joys of Monday Night Football always makes it a long weekend where you get to kind of enjoy the games that were being played. And there were some good games last week. And obviously we had the Charlie Smith element for the Irish side of our listener base, who obviously would have been tuned into that Saints game. But then Monday night came that Monday Night Football against the Patriots, where we were beaten 15-33, only 5 points off my prediction of 20-33. So I think I was the closest of the lot of us, which is not really an honour I want, I'm going to be honest with you, but you take any wins at the moment, don't you? we've had a few close games. We have actually had some games where we've played some of the better teams in the NFL and we've kind of kept it close. You look at the Lions, you look at the game against the Broncos as well. This was not one of those games. We were comprehensively decimated by what I would call the NFL's hottest team at the moment, who are on one hell of a streak, and Mike Vrabel has really turned it around there. And when I say comprehensively beaten, you don't look at that second half because they didn't really need to do much because they had done so much in that first half. They were up 7-30 at the half. Our 7 points being scored by Darius Slayton on a very good catch and run, to be fair to him. And it obviously should have been 10 points, and the Patriots should have obviously had less. However, there were a lot of miscues on our special teams, and that's what the Patriots did. They dominated us in all three phases, but it was the special teams that had the focus, I guess, for that first half because it was that bad. They had the 39-yard kick return on the opening kickoff. I know 39 yards doesn't sound like a lot, but it's further than a touchback. And there aren't that many teams hitting consistently on kick returns at the moment. You get the odd one. The Jets obviously did it at the weekend, but it's not a given. And we start off there. Then we have the 94-yard punt return touchdown where he's untouched. Jamie Gillan tries to stop him at the end, but it's not a great attempt by him. Then we have Younghoe Koo and Jamie Gillan's botched field goal. And we'll start here, Aaron, with the question. Younghoe Koo has obviously come out and said his Charlie Brown impression was because he saw the ball moving and I guess he decided to kick the turf as a safer way to not hit the ball and obviously make it worse, hoping that Jamie Gillan would turn into, I don't know, Eli Manning or Jaden Daniels or something and be able to run around for a bit and pass the ball, which obviously didn't happen. I watched the replay of it, and he is right, it does bobble. And I've gone back and forth on the thought process around whether he should have just hit it or whether he was scared because he knows what's happened to other Giants kickers this year who have missed field goals. And I don't know. I think it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I know some people have also not been very happy with his comments because they've kind of thrown Jamie Gillan under the bus, despite the fact that Jamie Gillan's job is to set the ball correctly and it was moving. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think as a kicker, you have one job, and that is to connect with the ball. Right? And yes, we want you to put it over every time, but your job is not to not kick the ball. If the ball is moving around and it affects the kick, you can go back to the tape and say, well, it missed because it wasn't set properly, right? You can't go back and say, oh, well, I didn't kick it, like I didn't kick it, and this kind of thing. A little bit disappointed with the reaction to it. So even these guys practice 3 times a week, all through the summer, all these kind of things. Even in Brickball, where we practice once a week and maybe twice a week, at times, but most of my career I've practiced once a week. We even have a fire drill in on the field goal. So what you would have on when you install your extra point field goal, you practice what we would call the fire drill. So that's where the snap goes wrong, something's wrong. You shout fire, 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 and the eligible receivers on the play break out into a route. So nobody's reacted in that way on this one. So the idea that maybe it was a designed fake or anything like this, it was a load of rubbish. There was clearly no fire call because nobody breaks out into a route. Jamie's probably the one that would normally call fire because he's the guy with the ball in his hand and everything else. So he's obviously felt my hold's okay. I'm just waiting for him to put his foot through the ball, and he might clobber me fingers if I'm moving a little bit. But yeah, just not good enough. Not good enough.
And it's as I have no idea who this is, but HTWNTX4 says there, it's poor leadership, poor management, poor coaching equals poor performances on the field all season long. And it does feel like that. And this isn't even the last thing we're going to talk about on special teams. Now, this one I know is a bit more of a contentious issue because there is the fumble by Gunnar Olszewski, but I'm loath to call him out for it because the ref missed a clear call there on helmet to helmet that causes his loss of consciousness, that causes him to fumble the ball. I'm surprised that one wasn't flagged.
Yeah, and it's one of those difficult ones, right? So you go back to the people that think the sport is too soft, the hits on the QBs and these kind of things, and the days of Lawrence Taylor, this would not be a flag. Right, but by the letter of the law, the way the rules have changed, if you lower the crown and lead with the crown of the head, even to a runner, not a defenseless player, even to a defensible player, as they would call it, it's still a penalty, right? But as always, this season we don't get the rub of the green anyway, right? My bigger concern, I don't know if you were going to touch this, was that Adebo was the backup for Gunnar. Right, and
was it Adebo or was it?
Holland.
It was Holland, yeah.
Holland, sorry, Holland was the backup for our. So why is our starting safety? And we've seen these errors previously with starters getting injured on special teams. Why is our starting safety the backup when we've got a guy on the practice squad who's returned kicks for a touchdown in your boy Smith Marset? I mean, we might see him at next time we're on the field because we need a kick returner and he's there. But what's Jalen Hyatt doing on the roster if he's not going to be back there returning kicks when and not there out there catching passes? Why can't Marset be elevated and do the kick return job? And arguably, I've not seen a single kick return this season as dynamic as he was last season.
And even Gunnar, who we've seen house one before, has been okay. I tell you who's been the most dynamic kick returner has been Banks.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why, if we're using him in that situation, as you say, Hyatt's not being used because obviously Banks was injured this week. So I will assume that if he was active, he would have been back there, not Holland.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just that there are baffling decisions. If surely we have somebody on the roster who can, even if they're not going to return it, just stand there and catch it.
Yeah.
I would be much happier having someone stand there and catch it than risk Holland, who has already missed time this season, miss more time. And like you're alluding to with the Adoree Jackson issue a few seasons ago, why are we putting ourselves in these situations? It is absolutely baffling. It wasn't just the special teams, though. The defence wasn't much better, despite, I will admit, it was a more aggressive look from Charlie Bullen's debut, but I don't think it was it was controlled in a way, but it didn't make a difference really to the way that we played defence. There was a little bit more, but the unit was still gave up 395 scrimmage yards. Drake May completing passes at will, 8 different receivers. And I think you have to highlight on the defence, Paulson Adebo comes back from injury, 11 targets, 8 receptions, 95 yards, a touchdown. Any hope that he would come back and kind of lock someone down and the passing woes would maybe settle a little bit just didn't happen.
No, and again, there were some wrinkles in the scheme. There was a few more disguised blitzes, but in a week, I don't know how you turn that around. I do need to do something for Shane because something happened for the first time this season. So I've got to put some shades on because Abdul Carter did get his first sack. He
did. Let's quickly touch on the Abdul Carter issue. Benched again for the entire of the first quarter, and lo and behold, we give up the most points we give up in the game in that first quarter, which does kind of show in a little way that we did need him out there, especially with Thibodeau being injured. But you have to make an example, and it is showing that there has been a lack of accountability, and it is nice to see that Kafka is doing it. But because of how thin we are as a team, it is obviously detrimental to the team. It's a kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. But LT came out yesterday and said that, he needs to cut the bullshit now, and he needs to buck his ideas up and prove. And LT was very, very vocal, talking about how he would never have let someone like Harry Carson down when he came in, and that the majority of the business is about the team and about your teammates, and the games are just part of that, and how he really does need to kind of mature up now.
Yeah, and I think we've got not completely pillory the kid, right? And I say kid because he is 21, right? He's not a super senior coming out. Yes, he's a top 3 draft pick. He should know better. He should have some better guidance around him. He should have some better leadership to kind of pop on it. There is some reports out there that it may have been a miscommunication, because it was apparently a special teams meeting that he missed.
Yeah.
He's not always on special teams. He's only on the one unit, and he wasn't always on that unit. So there was maybe a miscommunication, and with all of the coaching changes and this, that, and that, I can kind of see how it happens. And in some ways, I can understand maybe being harder on Abdul Carter than maybe a different guy in the locker room, because he is naturally, it's the same as Tom Brady says that Bill Belichick was hardest on him more than anyone, because he was the locker room leader, and he was this, if Tom Brady can get a bollocking, then nobody's above a bollocking type thing. So I better pull my socks up. And there might be an element of him being targeted a little bit, because he has this, privileged position by being a top 3 overall draft pick, and showing that if then Kafka's going to be hard on the wonder kid, everybody needs to pull their socks up.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, we'll end the talk on the Patriots now, just with a quick question for you. Do you think that this game kind of proved to everyone? Everyone was talking about how next season could we be the Patriots? Could we turn ourselves around? Is this a fair reflection to say that it proved just how far away we are from the Patriots right now?
I understand the question, Craig. I'm most disappointed that we fluffed it in prime time. We played our worst game in prime time when most of our eyes watched it. So to everyone else in the league, this is how we are. We're this 2-11 team that is, and this is exactly what we are. But if you've watched every minute of the Giants this season, you'll know that we're not a 2-10. We've got this good young nucleus to the roster, right? There's some real promise around Jackson Dar and these kind of things. And, maybe we're not as far away as you think, and you should keep me in my job. I'm not the bad luck element of the podcast.
What a beautiful little segue onto my next point, which is about that Joe Schoen presser. We're going to start with a few quotes, yeah? I understand the question. Not good enough. We won't make the same mistake twice. I understand the question. There are pieces here. I understand the question. The calls we've gotten, I think we're going to be able to fill the head coaching job. I understand the question. It was a bit of a defensive showing, I think, from Joe Schoen overall. And it obviously took a number of pressing questions from Pat Leonard to actually get more than it's got not good enough. But Pat did also get a few of the I understand the question, Pat. But Pat's killer question was after those when he said, when you say we are not maximising what we have, I think some people would say you don't have enough. So I'm asking, where have you erred in the fact that as far as composing the roster, building the roster, keeping draft picks on the roster who have not contributed, who don't look like they're going to contribute in the future, and who create depth issues on your roster that seem to be becoming glaring issues when these games are on the line? That question from Pat Leonard pretty much sums up a lot of the things that we've been saying and other Giants content creators have been saying around the fact that we have a thin roster where we have players like Jalen Hyatt who are not contributing to the cause and are still on the roster, who are stopping players like Smith Marset and like others from actually being able to be called up to the roster. Now, it was only in this question, really, that Joe Schoen took a second to kind of reflect and thought about his answer rather than giving what I imagine were the PR compiled statements that he was given backstage on how to answer this and how to answer that we saw in Hard Knocks when Joe Schoen was doing his pre-season presser, that they were saying, you're going to get a lot of questions about Barkley. This is how you need to frame it, yada, yada, yada. This was kind of the one where he turned around and said, okay, I'm not batting at 1,000. I have made mistakes. I've learned from them as much as I've learned from the things that he's got right. But Aaron, do you think Joe Schoen understood the question?
So controversially, no, I don't think he did understand the question. and I think it's because I don't think he understands how the Giants fans and the Giants think 5-25 over the last 30 games isn't good enough, and that's a reflection on him. He's a guy that majored in communications, so he's basically PR, right? So he is an expert in crafting the narrative and crafting the story and these kind of things, and I do think there are some strengths to Joe Schoen, and there is some truth to the fact that if you take a rookie GM, of which by definition, a majority of rookie GMs are, because if you do a really good job, you don't leave your job until you retire, right? You are going to have to grow in that role a little bit, and you have to expect as an organization, as a fan base, that we should expect it not to be perfect, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we can definitely say that he hasn't been perfect, and we understand you don't need to bat 1,000, Joe Schoen, but you need to bat what's 5-25, 1.125 or something like that, like not even that. Like it's so we're not even batting, at a AA league level, let alone major league level, right? So I understand the answer, but I don't think you understand the question.
And I've got to agree. Like it was a frustrating watch for the most part. And we've seen it before. I think the thing that annoys me the most is the fact that it almost felt Dable-esque at times, in the terms of like how Dable used to do his press conferences after games. And that was one of the things that really turned the fan base against Brian Dable, was the fact that, we would play awful and he'd come out and it would be the same sort of answers. And the fact that Joe Schoen was able to be memed enough in his own press conference on one press conference because he was repeating himself so often, I think just shows that as much as you want to kind of protect people and pull a blanket over the front and kind of try and stay hands off, when you're putting a product out on the field that we're putting out, and not just this season, across the last few seasons, with 2022 being the withstanding season there, I think it's in a way almost insulting to fans and their intelligence that you can just turn around and say some of the things that he did say. And I don't know, there was a little part of me that felt the longer that press conference went on, the more the mask slipped, and you could see that this is genuinely somebody who is very unsure whether he does stick around at the end of the season or not. I don't think from the way that he looked, it was maybe as certain as some people have put out in the press over the last few weeks.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. It didn't look mainly like a guy that knew he was selecting his head coach to lead his organization on the field, as it were. It felt like a guy that was trying to justify why he should be given that opportunity.
And let's be honest, with or without Joe Schoen, this head coaching job will be attractive. And he made that clear, and the kind of beat writers have kind of backed that up in the fact that we do have that young nucleus, maybe not as much as he maybe believes, but there is a young nucleus there. You only have to look at our offense and think about Dart and Neighbours and Scatterboo, and then even the way that JMS has been playing. If he continues that, you've got Andrew Thomas there. You have a decision to make about Jermaine Illuminor. You flip over to the defensive side, that's where it gets a little bit more murky. But again, there are some pieces there, but that's the area that needs the most work, really. So it is going to be attractive, but as Keith says here, I believe Joe's fate rests in the hands of a new coach. If an incoming coach wants him gone before he takes the job, he'll be gone. Don't forget, this is the same thing that happened at the Jaguars with Liam Cohen, where Liam Cohen said that he would not join the Jags with their previous. I can't remember. Bolt? Was it Bolt? Who was the?
I can't remember.
Yeah, whoever was the GM of the Jags
was Duval.
Yes, yeah. But Liam Cohen has his teams moving in the right direction now, so maybe it was the right decision there. Before we let you start tinkering, the Tinker Man.
Yep. Sorry, just one correction quickly. I've been doing some maths. 0.166 is what he's batting.
Okay, 0.166. There we go. We need the correct maths, as you know. Mayo maths always has to be correct. Yeah. Do you want to give us a very quick rundown about anything that you thought was noteworthy during the NFC East episode 1 for Hard Knocks?
Yeah, Jackson Dart and Theo Johnson didn't major in geography. I think that was
that's very clear. Yeah,
very clear.
But then again, neither did Tim Kelly, by the sounds of things, because there is no ocean within 2 miles of that place.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, but good job that they only need to know which direction is the end zone, and this the home fans, if there's any left in MetLife Stadium, can just point a bit like Forrest Gump, and or not Forrest Gump, the Water Boy or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess this was the thing I hadn't realized coming into the series was this was literally started last week. So straight away, it's Kafka is the head coach. The first thing that happens is Shane Bowen is fired, and so Shane Bowen doesn't appear in this either, and it's Charlie Bowen. Him and Kafka are chatting about how Bowen's feeling, and not Bowen, Charlie Bullen is feeling about how he's trying to get some routine in and trying to get some work on the game plan, and it was obviously Kafka was then seen in the back of the defensive meeting. Something that's kind of gone viral, and I'm not sure. I didn't really pick it up at the time. It was quite quick, but when they're in a defensive meeting, you see all the defensive players focus on the screen, except one defensive player is looking at the ceiling, looking disinterested, and that was Abdul Carter. So there's been some talk about whether he's not paying attention, although
we've all done it.
We've all sat there and gone, looked up, noticed something on the ceiling, been distracted from what we're doing.
Yeah,
and
the narrative is bad because of what's happening with Abdul at the moment. That's the problem.
Yeah.
If there wasn't the hoopla around everything that's going on, no one would have batted an eyelid at him staring at the ceiling for 2 seconds, if that. Like, it literally cuts to him and he looks down at the screen. So, like, I don't know. Yeah,
And
I think there's a lot of
I would put
straw
it
clutching.
past HBO's editors or the editors of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Just deliberately leaving that in there. Not meant
There
drawing
would have been more before.
Yeah. You know,
there would have been footage before.
Yeah. Obviously, we got to see the Cowboys very happy in the episode, so I tried to fast forward through those bits. And so, yeah, I don't know. Maybe there was 15 minutes of Giants. It was very weird. Because it aired Tuesday night in the US, so only 24 hours after the Patriots game. There was a couple of clips from the Patriots game right, and then it cut to like the credits. It was almost like, did they forget to edit the last segment? And it just kind of abruptly ended and kind of went off the credits. So maybe it will pick up with the post-game locker room kind of talk. And then obviously next week we're technically on bye week. So I don't know whether it will follow some of the players at home in bye week like it does in kind of preseason when they break away from camp, or whether it will just focus on the other 3 teams. But I mean, I guess the good thing for us, we've still got the Commanders and the Cowboys to play in our final 4 games. So those will obviously have a feature of that kind of. They're definitely running with the story that the NFC East is the premier division. It's where the lights are the brightest, and the hits are the hardest, and the rivalry is the most, and that's kind of a narrative that they want to tell. So I think they're going to kind of play into that when we have these rivalry games.
Want to big up any of our rivals too much, but when you look at what's happened over the last few weeks with the Cowboys, HBO must be thanking their goddamn stars that they weren't walking into a division where the Eagles are walking away with it and the other 3 are just fighting over a hamburger on the floor. Like, they must be thanking their lucky stars that the Cowboys are actually going to push the Eagles potentially for the last few weeks, and it's not just going to peter out very quickly, and they're just going to have to try and find feel good stories for the rest of the season. But no, you're right. Episode 3 will probably cover the Giants game against the Commanders, seeing as that's 2 going head to head there in the division. And then, like you said, week 18 against the Cowboys. I think from the schedule of this season, I think it runs through to the divisional round. So there's obviously, I think, 8 episodes or something or around that. So there's obviously a lot more to come, but we'll try and keep an eye on it. For anybody who wants to get hold of it and watch it, Discovery Plus is probably going to be your best bet to try and watch it on demand, or TNT Sports. If anybody has TNT Sports, it's not on Sky Sports. I haven't seen it on DAZN yet. I don't know if that's going to go onto DAZN. They have had all the previous ones, but in the same vein, Sky Sports have always had the previous ones as well. So whether this is a shake-up, I don't know. It's also in America on HBO Max. Obviously, I don't know. I don't think we get that over here. You can get it via a VPN if you want to do that, but Discovery Plus is probably your easiest way to get hold of it. And at least there is an opportunity to get hold of it over here this time, as opposed to what happened last time with the preseason Giants Hard Knocks, which is still not available to watch in the UK if you wanted to, which seemed completely and utterly baffling. Surprised they didn't make a DVD of that one.
Maybe Saquon Barkley will.
Yeah, obviously Saquon Barkley does feature quite heavily. There was a little bit of me that did. I've only watched a little bit of the episode, which is why Aaron's done the sort of overview of this. I was watching it, and unfortunately, what I was watching it on decided to die earlier. However, there was a little part of me that did enjoy the Nick Sirianni trying to figure out where everything's going wrong within the first 5 minutes of the
I was hoping
episode.
he was going to cry. Sirianni cry.
He only does that at the national anthem.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on to the chunky bit. We're sort of 35 minutes in. Aaron, you are going to attempt to fix the franchise. He's going to change the hats across to the GM hat now. Keep his head warm as well at the same time. But
I'm probably cooking this, so like
yeah.
Russ.
So just to give everyone an idea of how this is going to go, Aaron's going to speak about 2 potential scenarios, basically, that could happen at GM, 2 potential scenarios that could happen at head coach. We're also going to have a look at a few of the free agents, and then we're going to round things off with a cheeky little mock draft. We'll have a mock draft on this show, and it will be the first one of the season. I'm sure Shane and Kev will be absolutely devastated that they're not involved in it, but it's only fair that a GM gets to do everything, and it will be a 3-rounder as well, and we'll see how that goes. But right, do you want to start with the GM discussion?
Yeah, so it's a bit tricky. So I'm trying to do this as what I will do, or what I would do. Not will means like I am going to get the GM role, but kind of ground it in some reality as well. So I think, there's a little bit of maybe predictiveness in some of this as well. So, and I think at GM you've got to kind of start with Joe Schoen. I think there is a possibility he is fired at the end of the season. As I said, he's gone 20, 43 and 1 as it stands. 5 of 25 of the last, 0.166 as we just worked out of since the start of 2024. And there's a distinct possibility that he is just keeping his successor's seat warm at this point in time. I know Bobby Skinner put out today he's the man to fire Joe Schoen and his reasonings why, and it's hard to knock many holes in kind of Bobby's analysis there. It's a Giants Nation show if you want to watch that. Give Bobby a 5-star review after you've given us a 5-star review and a like and a subscribe. But he has a patchy draft record. Let's state that. I don't think there's an argument that he's had at least as many hit misses as he's had hits. I kind of give him a pass on Evan Neal because I don't think there's anybody that didn't think Evan Neal was the right pick at that stage in the draft, and he'd only been in the door a few weeks or months by the time that he's making that pick. But it's the kind of depth pieces on the roster and where they've gone and these kind of things. So you can put some credence into his modernizing of some of our backroom processes, but how much credence you give it when you think the dinosaur of Dave Gettleman was the guy that was last occupying that chair, and a lot of the things that he's done probably weren't around in the days of Ernie Accorsi and so how much of modernizing is like really revolutionary or not, I don't know. There have been a number of high-profile roster mismanagement issues that we've talked about as well. So I think there's enough there to say, well, actually, you don't get the opportunity to come back. I think, however, I can make the argument to keep him. So I think largely the trades that he has done have been good trades. They've been good value. I think the counter argument to that is, what about the trades that haven't happened? So why are Banks and Hyatt and some of these other guys on rosters? Why did Barkley ultimately go out on free agency and not be traded? And all of these kind of things I think are kind of counter arguments. But I think the trade for Dart, the Brian Burns trade, even the trade of Leo Williams away. I know Leo's looking great in Seattle, but I don't think we all thought he wouldn't be great in Seattle. I think it was okay value for what we got at the time. He has rebuilt our offensive line. It's now, according to PFF, the 10th best offensive line. Shout out Carm Brasillo. I don't think we can ignore the coaching that has gone into that unit. And then if you look at the cap position that we're in, we have the second lowest amount of dead money in the entire league. So moving forward, we've got the most flexibility in kind of maximizing the amount we're spending on players and not paying people not playing for us. And we're one of two teams that have 0 void years as well. So those void years are like future flexibility. The Eagles have got like $400 million on void years, right? But they just won a Super Bowl. They're in the hunt again. That's just an example of a team going for it, right? The Saints were in a really bad position when they still had, and because they went for it, didn't quite make it, and now they're kind of paying the price for that kind of void year strategy. But that just means we haven't blown our budget on players that aren't good enough, and I kind of feel like that one of the dangers of keeping Joe Schoen is he's still going to feel on a hot seat. And he will now go and below that budget. He hasn't done it yet. He didn't do it this year, knowing that he was in the hot seat. But there's a chance that he goes and does it. Or there's a chance that he's very conservative and doesn't do it. And that's part of the problem, right?
Yeah, but we've spoken many a time on this podcast, way obviously before you joined and since you've joined. And I think you've been very vocal about it as well, on the fact that I like the fact that the Giants are a kind of traditionalist franchise where we haven't used the void years to our benefit, and we've kind of tried to be very flat with the sort of cap space and everything. But there's got to be a time where you look at all the other franchises that are doing it and reaping the benefits, because the Saints are an outlier in a way. It's a bad example, but one of the best teams for actually manipulating the cap is the Browns. They don't take advantage of it, mainly because of the fact that they can't seem to get a quarterback ever. But if they were able to get a quarterback, with the way that they do manipulate the cap, put money into void contracts, look at the cap space that's due to become available in the future, they actually build really good rosters. And it's how that they've been able to keep someone like Myles Garrett on the roster, even though they're paying Deshaun Watson a horrific amount of money still.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, if you think about coming into the phase that we're in, if you're happy that Dart is the guy, and I think I think there's evidence that he might be, and maybe it's not time to pull the trigger now, but you can start to think in that vein of certainly what can we do with those kind of things. So the cap, the position, there's a certain amount of ownership has to sign off on these void years and these bonuses, because that's cash you have to put up front into escrow. You have to have the cash. Obviously, they've sold that 10% to bring another owner in to give an injection of cash. Whether they needed it or didn't need it, I don't know. But there's definitely cash in the kitty now as to actually use as a war chest if you deem it possible. And obviously, it's something that ownership sign off. Something that was clear in the Schoen press conference, that ownership definitely did have some fingers on the key decisions there as well, which I don't think is a surprise. But maybe, and this is maybe scenario one, maybe it's time to turn the keys over to Brandon Brown, the assistant GM. So Brandon Brown, he's been with us for the last 2 years, since 2022. He's where Joe Schoen came through the regional scouting, the college scouting route. Kind of Brandon Brown's background is more the pro scouting route, so more of an assessment of the pro players and bringing in the free agents and trades and that kind of thing. And obviously was under Howie Roseman until he joined us at the Giants. So he's obviously been a finalist for a couple of guys around the league, this, that, and the other. So there might be if you agree with Joe Schoen's argument, but think the publicity is better to move on from him, this might be the right approach to say, well, actually, Joe Schoen, thank you very much. We're going to go in a different direction, but you don't blow the whole system up, and that you've got Brandon Brown taking over. Obviously, he'll have his own ideas, and he'll bring things in that he's obviously not making the final decision. We saw that in kind of the off-season Hard Knocks, right? He definitely have a different approach to some of these things. So that's an option.
Yeah.
Again, for my argument around that is anyone you take, any of the GM candidates that I've seen mentioned are guys that are first-time GMs that might need to learn the ropes, that either have a pro scouting background or they're a scout network, or they've been an executive for a number of years. They might have been executives outside of the league and in other sports fields as well, and have come in and these kind of things. And again, I think if you sit outside of circles, as we clearly do, as we don't sit in the league offices and we're not chatting to these kind of people, I think it's really challenging to decide who should go through. But that's kind of option A that I think is one option. And again, part of that reason is if your head coach that's coming in doesn't want to work under Joe Schoen, that might also be the reason why you go, thanks, Joe, but we're going to go Brandon Brown. And the new head coach, then they're on an equal footing. It's not like the guy's been brought in specifically by Joe Schoen, and Joe Schoen's on a hot seat still, and that kind of weird dynamic. You kind of go, right, Brandon Brown, here's your 2 years as a GM, head coach coming in, here's your 2 years as a head coach. So yeah, thoughts, Craig?
I can see the thought process. I know that there's a lot of people out there who are saying, well, if you're going to get rid of Joe Schoen, then Brandon Brown's not the answer because he's been there. But let's not forget that it's only a few years ago that everyone was clambering over Brandon Brown staying around when he was interviewing for other jobs, and they were like, no, we need to keep him because he could be the successor once, at some point with Joe Schoen. But I do think that when you look back at that Hard Knock series, you're right. Brandon Brown always came in with a different approach, and you could kind of tell at times maybe he didn't agree with everything that Joe Schoen did in that off-season. I know that the off-season was difficult that year, and what happened has potentially haunted the Giants a little bit since then, in the terms of letting Saquon Barkley go, and obviously what happened with the Daniel Jones experiment. But I personally wouldn't hate it, but I think if we are going to get rid of Joe Schoen, then maybe we look at what is your scenario 2, which is outside the building.
Yeah. So, and again, you could replace this with a number of guys, but I think when you hear my head coach discussion around scenario 2, this makes more sense as well. So, I've dubbed this scenario Rams East. And that's because we're looking at John McKay who's the assistant GM for the Rams. He's been part of the front office with Les Snead for the last 10 years and was part of the GM team that brought the Sean McVay in the first place and the McVay tree. So obviously the Rams have got a slightly different attitude. The FM picks, they've had obviously won a Super Bowl in that time frame. They've had a different approach to maybe how we've done it in the room before. But the Rams have been an executive and head coaching farm for the rest of the league, and maybe it's time to if you see someone there doing something good, maybe it is okay to follow and not just cut a new groove and go against the grain. Actually go and, take this expertise from the other place. So that's kind of the thing. There's a bunch of other guys, like you said, the Browns assistant GM is another possibility. the Ravens assistant GM, another possibility in a similar vein. But I think for me, the kind of top candidate outside would be that Rams package that we'll get onto in a minute.
Yeah, I'll be brutally honest. I'll hold my hands up. When it comes to GM prospects, I'm not going to be your guy to look at that. I'm not looking around the league, looking at assistant GMs. I think if Joe Schoen was to be fired and we were looking at opening up a GM search, then I would probably have a look at the names that are out there. But I do think it's very difficult when you're looking at something like this and looking around the league. So, fair play to you for kind of having a look. And I get the thought process as well, because looking at an assistant GM at a franchise who not only have a head coach who has worked out very, very well, but also has created head coaches from his own tree who have gone on to do very well. They won a Super Bowl. Panthers game withstanding, they've looked very good again this year. They obviously negotiated a contract with Matthew Stafford to get him to stay when there were rumours that he was going to be obviously coming to us. And they've built a team there that are relatively balanced on either side of the ball as well. I know that they've had special teams issues with their kicker, but defensively they have drafted very well with players like Braden Fisk and with Jared Verse, obviously two FSU alums, so I'm going to remember them. But offensively, they've brought in veterans like Devontae Adams, who has given them a different dimension. So I totally get the thought process. I mean, rather than going through your head coach for scenario A first, do you want to go through the Rams East scenario just to tie it together?
Yeah, so part of the whole process is you bring in the same way Shane and Dable came in from the Bills. You bring John McKay as the GM, and you bring Chris Schuler, the Rams DC, in as the head coach. So you bring the coach and executive that are already familiar with each other, should hopefully get on. I don't mind a bit of healthy tension between the two of them, but have that kind of thing that comes in. And then and Chris Schuler, again, he's a McVay original, so he's been with the Rams since 2017. He's been promoted 5 times. He is been their DC for the last 2 seasons. A Rams defense that obviously has lost some of its best players, but is still performing at a really high level. And he has a slightly different scheme to what we're used to. So he plays like a 3-3-5 scheme that would fit our roster quite well, I think, with the kind of players that we've got. Obviously, it means we need to put some more work into our secondary, but that's kind of where we've got an off season to go into that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that it's a logical choice to put the two together. Let's be honest, Chris Schuler is a person who has already tickled the fancy for some people, and is in the betting odds. So we're not, you're not plucking something from out of the sky here. It makes perfect sense, to be honest. And I'm not opposed to a defensive head coach. We haven't done it for forever since Bill Parcells, and as long as they make the right hires at OCDC, I think it doesn't matter. You're looking at the best person who can manage the entire football operations as a head coach. I don't want somebody to come in and be a play caller like we kind of had with Dave's, where Dave's has undermined Kafka a few times and taken it on. I think what I'd rather see going forward, and this is kind of a little bit of a tangent, what I'd like to see going forward is, if you don't trust your offensive coordinator to call plays, fire your offensive coordinator and get an offensive coordinator who can, because as a head coach, you have way too much on your plate to be putting that on yourself as well. And I do think that was part of his downfall. Scenario A then, what way are you kind of spinning that head coach?
Yeah, so again, I know a lot of the chat originally about the next head coach for the New York Giants, and whether this was, and again, I think it was kind of dismissed by the Giants. But certainly the talk in the media, the talk on X, that these kind of things, was that we had to bring in a guy with head coaching experience. We need that CEO. So we, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not that inspired by the list of former head coaches that are currently available. So Mike McCarthy, sorry. You don't want to bring one of those guys to off to try and fight relegation. Gruden, Spags. I wouldn't hate, but age concerns me for Spags. He's up there in years and these kind of things. But I don't think I'd hate it. I just don't think it's likely. Cliff Kingsbury. Again, I'm not sure how different he is to Dable. I don't see him as a disciplinarian, and I think we need to have a guy that's a little bit tougher. Arthur Smith, again, he's kind of getting something. Could it be as bad as it is going forward if we keep Joe Shade? It can, actually. Yeah. So Arthur Smith, has he done a good job with Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers offense? Maybe. Brian Flores, interesting candidate, but maybe not for the Giants, considering there's a lawsuit still ongoing. Rob Saleh didn't have a great time in New York. Jim Schwartz, Browns DC, done a good job with the Browns defense, but Jim Schwartz maybe is just happy being a DC after his head coaching failure at Detroit. Vance Joseph, the Broncos former head coach and DC, current DC. Bill Belichick, I don't think. So all of those candidates with head coach experience don't love. The idea of and I try to keep it, again, reality, where we are today, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Kevin Stefanski, all still employed as head coaches. If they stay as head coaches, obviously they're a fantasy. I think any of those three become available, I'd be seriously interviewing them. But kind of the idea of a head coach that's a retread, it's not like it's you don't have to find the next hot coordinator. Look at Vrabel, right? Vrabel in the last year has come in. Nobody thought he got fired from Tennessee because he was a bad coach. I just think they didn't win enough games and he had to go, and he was maybe a bit fed up of the situation in Tennessee, so kind of said that he wanted to go. Took a year out, come back at Patriots, now leads the AFC as the number one team and all that kind of thing. So it can happen. And look at Tom Coughlin, right? Tom Coughlin, Jaguars head coach that before he became to the Giants and kind of led us that way. So I think it definitely can work a retread for, I know it's not a great term, but that kind of thing. So what led me to, H-Town has already mentioned the guy's name, former BC head coach like Tom Coughlin, and current DC for the Packers, Jeff Hafley. So I personally, and again, we mentioned it, we haven't had a DC head coach since Bill Parcells, but that's not really the reason that's driving for me. I think the best talent at the moment for head coaching opportunities is on the defensive side of the board. We've had a lot of offensive coordinators be plucked into head coaches roles. Obviously, Ben Johnson was the kind of apple of the eye for a few years now, and he obviously has gone to the Bears and doing a decent job at the Bears. And two really good, high-quality head coaches were available last off-season, and we weren't in the market for it. It feels like, when we were always wanting to get that high-value draft pick at edge rusher or quarterback, and we were never quite in the position to get it. Almost like the same with these head coaches. So yeah, Hafley, I think is a a really high quality thing. I like his defensive style. Matt LaFleur, the Packers QB, speaks really highly of him as a football mind. The Packers defense is the 5th versus the run, something that we've obviously struggled. 4th in yards per attempt versus the pass, and 5th in points against. So he's in charge of a top 5 defense that had struggled for a few years. And okay, they've had Micah Parsons added to it, but it's not been like over investment on the defense. Obviously, their first round pick was on the offensive side of the ball, so it's not something that's like they've gone heavy on defense and suddenly the scheme is good. I think it's a scheme, and he runs a really nice scheme. So he runs a 4-3 base defense, which kind of suits how we're personnel, but runs a single high safety similar. At leading and boom is kind of the style of defense. Emphasizes gap penetration, press man coverage, relying on the defensive front to run the pass or pin their ears back mentality. All with our defensive line. Does that sound exciting, Craig? That pin your ears back. Does it sound like what we've been playing? Incorporates simulated pressures and exotic blitz packages, disguising his coverage post-snap to keep offensive guessing. Does that sound like our defense or the complete opposite of our defense?
I don't think it sounds like our defense. I mean, you're basically talking about having bloody bread and water versus 3-course cordon bleu kind of thing going on here.
Yeah, and it's kind of exactly what we were hoping for from I think. So, and again, we could go because he's already a DC. The only way to take talent like that onto your team, obviously, is to go and hire them as your head coach. And the he's not just going to be the head coach. Like I say, he's being praised for his communication, his game planning, his real way of thinking about football. So I think that's the kind of guy that I would like to see. And again, he has head coaching experience at college level. So it's not quite the same thing, but the part of the reason he took a DC job in the NFL to leave a Boston College head coaching gig because he wanted to kind of focus on the football, didn't want to deal with the whole NIL stuff and this, that, and the other. Obviously, maybe BC aren't quite as high up in the kind of NIL spending ability and all of this kind of stuff as some of the bigger universities. So obviously we've got connections to BC through Tom Coughlin as well, and that kind of background. So I just think he's a guy that fits, and he's going to be high up on my list. And then the kind of wild card, I don't know, scenario A, scenario B was mentioned earlier as well. I don't know if this will upset Kev or make Kev happy, but Marcus Freeman, the current Notre Dame head coach, another candidate that, again, I think he's a guy that would fix the locker room, and he's a guy that's, again, a defensive guy that would players for playing an aggressive defense. And I think a really good candidate if we want to go to the college ranks. Loads of people have dismissed it. I think you'd be a fool to dismiss college pipeline as a thing. And maybe he would also be willing to take a DC job in the NFL. I don't know. Obviously, Notre Dame's big bucks running that organization. Not quite coming from BC to be an NFL coordinator position. What do you think, Craig?
No, I think you're spot on there. I've got to say, we may have differing views on certain head coaches. Someone like I almost called him Mick McCarthy then, Mike McCarthy. I'm not. I would be okay with that. I do think if you go for someone like him, you're going to get somebody who will. He won't be flashy. It's not a sexy hire. It is someone who very much is going to come in and kind of reset the franchise. Is he going to push us to the upper echelon of what we want it to happen? Maybe he is good at getting winning seasons out of his his teams. He has won a Super Bowl. He did take the Cowboys to the playoffs as much as he took the Packers to the playoffs. Maybe it didn't happen as many times as it should have done. I don't think that the Cowboys were that bad when they had him. I just feel like it had run its course, and it got to the point where it was just a situation where it made sense to sort of part for both ways. I'm okay with it. Tomlin, I'm a little torn on. I like the idea of Tomlin. I do think he'll come in. I think he'll be tough. I think he'll be a culture reset kind of guy. I do worry that being in the same job for so long, but then again, you could make this argument for John Harbaugh in a way. Being in a job for so long, is that gonna translate across? Maybe that's a similar argument to the argument I have against Bill Belichick, and the fact of, you've almost run your course and it's now getting to a bit where has the game evolved beyond you? But I don't think you've got as much of a risk with those two as you do with Bill. Everyone knows my thoughts on Bill. My thoughts on Bill. But I like the idea of Hanley. I like the idea behind the guy from ND, Freeman. I think it could. Every head coaching hire is important, and we have gone through quite a few since Tom Coughlin left. But it does feel like this one has a little air of importance above it, just because of the talent we now have on the roster. Kind of gives it a little bit more. We're just over the hour mark. I would imagine we're probably going to end up going till another half hour at least. But do you want to try and fire through some of these free agents of what you would do with the roster? Because the Giants have a lot of free agents, but they also have a lot of players on the roster who maybe aren't contributing as much as we would like, and we could find ways to replace them as well.
Yeah, so I think looking at our roster, there's some key decisions in this off season, and maybe we'll see some extensions and stuff over the next week. But I'm not sure there's much incentive for the guys that are upcoming free agents not to test the market. So Jermaine Illuminor is the number one must keep on the roster. For me, I'd be going out and giving him whatever I need to keep him a New York Giant. I don't want him testing free agency. I want to give him a good enough offer that he signs up for the next 3+ years as a New York Giant. And that's partly because he has guard tackle flexibility. So if Bo develops and can play tackle, and we can commit Jermaine Illuminor inside, that's really, really important for me. So Jermaine Illuminor is my top priority as kind of the guys that we have going. Wandale is a tricky one, right? Because it's really hard to value him because he's a slot-only guy, and outside of Rashee Rice, there's not many other successful slot-only guys. So CeeDee Lamb does his best work in the slot, but he's not a slot-only guy, right? So, and I know Wandale played outside a bit more in the last few weeks, and he's showing a little bit more there. And that's what makes it really tricky, right? He's a guy that's always available. He's a guy that's been somewhat productive, although he's had a lot of scam completions that are, really short yardage and actually are negative EPA plays. They're actually worse for you as a team.
I guess it actually makes it more difficult with Wandale because of how well he's performing this season. Because last season was anti receiver in a way, wasn't it? Because you look at, he was force fed the ball, and as you said, his ADOT was horrific, and he was just expected to make things happen. Whereas this year, he's making things happen, but in a much more productive way because of how he's being used in the scheme.
Yeah. So, and then there's kind of like in finance, there's this sort of thing called opportunity cost, right? So if you give Wandale the big contract, you give Wandale all of these slot snaps. You take them away from somebody else, and actually, are you losing out because you've got a guy that's good and not great? And that's kind of some of the problem with Wandale. But he is still really young. I was surprised how young Wandale is. He's a guy that's obviously coming to the end of his rookie contract, and he's younger than some of the guys that have been coming out in drafts in the last year.
Yeah, I think he'd be 25 by the time the season starts. I think he's 24 at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah. So he's arguably not peaked, or he's coming into his prime now, rather than being in his prime years during his rookie contract. So that's a really interesting thing with Wandale. But I think I'm leaning yes, I'm bringing him back because I just don't want to interrupt Dart's development, and I think I bring him back and I try and keep him as long as possible. Cordell Flott is another guy that's out of contract. Again, I'm seeing numbers around 9 million for Cordell Flott, which is decent, very decent CB2 money. Would we say he's a very decent CB2? I don't know. But I think given, and again, if we take scenario B where we're going into that kind of Chris Schuler defense, we need more defensive backs. I wouldn't let him walk out of the building. I think in the Jeff Hafley scheme, I think you can be a bit selective. Again, Jeff Hafley, because he plays man coverage, heavy man coverage, we might see the best of Banks. Because when he played, I don't know, it's controversial. I know he's been terrible, but when in his rookie year, he showed flashes in Wink's scheme, which plays a lot more press man. So it's possible that, and put it this way, Banks is going to likely be on the roster next year because there's no benefit in cutting him. We save no money in cutting him. So the only way we save money is if we trade Banks, and that's only who's going to trade for a guy that's now just doing a first round kick returner, right? So that's the guy, and then the final two guys. I'm bringing back Micah McFadden. I don't think he's going to be expensive to bring him back coming off the injury, but I think I don't want to lose the linebacker, and I'm bringing back Austin Schlottman as the backup center. I think when he's been in relief, he's done a good enough job. I don't want to lose all of our interior linemen, so I'm bringing him back and I'm keeping him there. There's a couple of other guys like Azudu, Stinney, Neal. They're all going to be leaving the offensive lineman room in this scenario. It's a lot of outflow. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe one more stays of Azudu and Stinney. But they are, yeah. I also have Greg Van Roten leaving as well at 36. I'm not sure he's going to stay in the league anyway. But I also want to upgrade at guard. So that's what I would do. And then if you look at the cap position, obviously, how am I affording all of these guys? Well, our effective cap at the moment is -2 million if we sign all of our draft picks and get to a 51 player thing. So we need to make some room. There's 57 million possible with some restructuring of contracts without adding void years or anything like that. Anything like just turning salary to bonus. So there's plenty of room in that 57 million to give those contracts out, even to Illuminor, Wandale, and Flop, keeping all three on board. And then there's 27 million in cuts that I'm going to make. So I'm going to cut Hudson and save 5.5 million. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. Our third string tackle, after what we've seen from him, isn't worth the 5.5 million that we would give him to keep him. I'm cutting Gray and Gano and saving 4.5 million. I'm cutting one Terry because that saves 5.25 million. And again, a third string running back that we can save 5.25 million on feels like a luxury. I like the guy. He's played well in relief this week and previous weeks. He's apparently a great locker room guy, great in the running back room. but I just think it's a luxury that we don't need. Eric Gray, another 1.1 million that we can save, and I think we're better off bringing in a undrafted rookie or Turbo or someone like that, being that guy. He bobbled a kick return week before last as well. I'm not sure why he's still on the roster. And not seen him with any carries of any note.
No.
Maybe the most controversial one. I'm cutting John Runyon, who I think has been our weakest interior lineman. I think him and GVR are balanced, but we saved 9 million by cutting John Runyon, and I think I'd rather invest in different ways at guard, and so I think it's a challenging one. The other guy that I haven't cut, but might be the alternative to John Runyon, would be Bobby O. Bobby O, there's a similar kind of amount saving in cutting him. That might be the alternative route, but again, depending on which defensive scheme you take, depends on whether you need 2 middle linebackers or 1 middle linebacker in that scheme to really make it work, and that might be the difference. So I've effectively chosen to keep Micah McFadden and to move on from Bobby O, and that's largely a cost cap casualty. And I think we might have had the best out of Bobby O. I don't think I'm not massive on his performances this year. So thoughts? Hyatt will cut. We save 1.5 million if we cut him or if we trade him. But I don't see the point of keeping him on the roster. But there is a saving for cutting him, unlike Banks.
I think the ship has sailed on trading Jalen Hyatt. I think if it didn't happen at the trade deadline, it's not going to happen in the off season when you've got a bigger pool of players really to work with, and obviously you're planning for the draft with a lot of teams as well. I think you'd cut him. I don't think anyone's giving anything up for him. I agree with most of those, if not all of them. That there's maybe an argument with Singletary and Runyon where you say to them, let's restructure, or not restructure, but maybe do you offer them the ability to take a pay cut to stay because of the fact that the saving is that much? Neither of them have shown maybe enough to get an extension that you could maybe bring. If they got an extension, you would not only have to bring their overall capital down, but obviously you're then going to save on that first year because that's how it would work. But do you really want to extend to players who haven't maybe lived up to the hype? I do think Singletary is a very valuable piece in that running back room, and maybe if you can agree the right deal with him, you would keep him. Runyon, I agree. I don't think he's been what we hoped he would be, and that decline that he's had in his last year in Green Bay has kind of continued. Maybe he hasn't declined, but he's plateaued to a bit where he's plateaued to a okay level rather than going back to his really good level that he was at prior to his final season with Green Bay. I don't think there's any there that I would disagree with. Just conscious of time, I know we need to look at the free agents that you would bring in. Do you want to maybe focus on the positions and then throw out a couple of names, but we won't go too deep into the why?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, the number one target, or the top two targets, I think they're equal. Again, in that time scenario, we're moving on from Bobby O. Is definitely a linebacker. So you've got Devin Bush of the Bears, Leo Chanel of the Chiefs, both pending free agents this year. Devin Bush is like way up there in run stopping grade. He's also decent in pass coverage as well. But I'd be putting that guy. And historically, as a franchise, obviously we know how long it's been since a first round linebacker. We have survived on free agent middle linebackers, and Antonio Pierce. We had kind of trying to think now, but number of guys that we've brought in on. Bobby O again, another example. That we brought in as veteran free agent signings, and I think that's where we need to go. The next one is guard. So Dylan Parham, Ed Ingram from the Texans, or Isaac Sumalo. Again, there's a couple of guards out there. I'd spend some money on a guard, bring a guy in. I don't think any of the guys in our locker room right now are the answer. And at the moment, I need 2 starting guards with the way that this has gone. So I'm spending the money and bringing the starting guard in, and maybe I can get another guard out of Bo, Illuminor, and anything that's on the roster that I'm keeping around. And then I've got the draft. The other thing is, if we go the Rams route, I'd look at someone like Eric Stokes from the Raiders as a cornerback and trying to bring him in, because I need that extra cornerback in that scheme for sure. So yeah, the free agent cornerbacks coming, but I don't expect a massive splash in free agency. Like I said, there are ways that we can use void years to open up contracts. We can do things. Maybe we can even think about extending Andrew Thomas again, because I think he's a guy that we want him to be a Giant forever. So you can move some things around and get that kind of thing. And that's where I would. I think if we have to be a bit creative with cap room and things like this. Even Dex as well. Dex, I know he's had a down year, but he's a guy that I don't think I want him playing on another team. So these guys, I'm willing to extend, restructure, put void years in, move things around to open up room to bring in a guard, a linebacker, and maybe a cornerback as well.
Cool. So let's move ourselves over to the edge, and we will put the mock draft simulator from PFF up on the board. Obviously, it's just going to be a 3-round draft, so we'll kick it off as it stands. The Giants, according to this mock draft simulator, are picking at number 2, and apparently our needs are guard, tackle, and DB. We're not going to trade up to number 1. Apparently, the Titans are sticking and taking Arvell Reese. So I guess off the bat, it's really looking at the trade candidates, and you may be looking at that one at the top there.
Yeah. So what have we got as options on the trade options? If we tick it down, if you click on the Jets banner there.
Yeah.
Sorry, in the middle. If you click where it says New York Jets, next pick number 7 on the. Where it says teams to trade with. Sorry. That's it. There. Click there. Yeah, that's it. Click on there.
I don't have.
Oh, it's not dropping. I'm not seeing it. It's not dropping down. But okay, let's go with the Jets anyway. Let's take the 7 and the 23 from the Jets.
For the 2.
Yeah, and then I think maybe the 48 as well, and then a 2 next year. Let's try that.
It's a 55% chance, apparently.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
they have taken it though.
Yeah, so that gives us 2 first rounders this year, an extra 2, and a number 2 coming down. So obviously the Jets are coming up for a quarterback, right?
They did. They took Ty Simpson from Bama.
I'm not sure it will be Ty Simpson, but there we go. So then that brings us in. Into this state of who's available for us. So Caleb Downs, I know this is really high for a safety, but would be a dominant player on the back end in the way that we want Carter to be on the front end. So that's a really nice option. We've obviously got the wide receivers in McKillum, and I presume Tyson's gone, but we've got Carnell Tate. I actually also, a bit further down, I think he'll go higher by the time we get to draft it. If we scroll down and find where's our Caden McDonald, the defensive tackle from thing. Now I don't know if he'll be on a next pick, but if my hope is that we can get him with our 2nd first round pick, right? And I think he is the dominant run defender we need to put next to Dex that would really solidify our D line and kick off our run defense. So what I think we do in this scenario is we take the wide receiver that I think we need to really give another weapon. And in this scenario, I'll go Carnell Tate.
So just quickly, H-Town, which is basically going to be his name from now on because it's easier to say. So thank you for that one. Would you trade the 7 for more picks? I can't remember very many instances. I think there might be one, and I cannot remember who it is, but I can't remember many instances where you've got a team trading down and then trading down again, especially this early in the draft. I know it happens a lot further down, but this early, I think the Bills might have done it a few years ago where they traded down and then they traded back out again.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it, but I think I think that there's levels to players, right? So if you move down a tier of players, let's say there's 6 guys and you rank them all the same, and you actually, so if you've got 4 or 5 guys the same, you can trade down 3 or 4 picks, pick up the extra pick for later on in the draft, and get the same level player. But what you tend to find at the tops of drafts is there's a drop off, and the danger of trading out of here is you lose out on Carnell Tate or Jordan Tyson, who I think are 1 and 2. And I think the reason why I wouldn't trade the 7 again is I still think I need that blue chipper or light blue chipper might how it comes through, and I think that's where I would take Carnell Tate here.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying there is indicative of the Giants roster at the moment. So if the Giants had a more well-balanced roster, you could maybe do it, but because we are missing top-tier players, let's be honest, this is an opportunity to really get someone who not only helps the team as a whole, but will also help the quarterback that we now have.
Yeah, and I think as well, when we're talking about a premium position like wide receiver, and we've seen teams with 2 wide receiver 1s now dominating, and I think that's where we want to be, and that's hopefully what we've done here. Right, we haven't added. I know we kept Wandale and Caden McDonald's there, so perfect. So that is for me. If we can trade with the Jets and get the 23 pick, Caden McDonald I think is the perfect pick. Interior defensive linemen are not as valuable as edge rushers and things like that. So back end of the first round, ideal place for them. You could look at a tackle guard prospect. You could look at a cornerback here. But for me, I know in the weekend we're going to have Ohio versus Indiana on DAZN as one of the highlight games from college football this weekend. This is a game you can go and watch some really superstar first-round talent. Look out for Caden McDonald's effect on the game, and I think hopefully you'll all fall in love with him like I have.
So if we take Caden McDonald there, the defensive interior player, so now we're moving into the second pick of the second round, of course, because that's the way that the draft normally crumbles here. So we've got ourselves defensive interior, we've got a wide receiver.
Yeah,
there are 2 cornerbacks here at the top in Brandon Cisse from South Carolina. You've got Colton Hood from Tennessee, AJ Harris from Penn State a little further down. Now, he's a player that I've seen a few times be mocked to the Giants when it's come to a longer draft rather than the first round. Is cornerback what you would look at here, or are you looking at that offensive line?
So what have we got as tackle guard prospects here on the board?
So tackle and interior, your highest is Caleb Lumu, the tackle from Utah.
Who I think is a guard as well. So I'd be tempted by Caleb Lumu.
Now, obviously, this is something that I know both of us have watched, and I think also Shane has watched. But you've got the NFL Stock Exchange guys obviously did a Fix the Franchise on the Giants. Now, if you haven't watched that, or go and watch that, that is something that has kind of inspired this conversation on this tonight. But they took Caleb Lomu, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I think certainly was in the discussion, absolutely, in a couple of scenarios. I personally, and if I've gone and signed at least one free agent guard, I'm personally okay to wait, and I think DB is a bigger need. I'm not miles down the review of corners. I might go Colton Hood though. If you click on him, just click on his name and see if he fits. So yeah, so he is a man coverage. He's got a higher man coverage grade than zone coverage grade. So he fits that man coverage scheme of our new Hafley scheme that we're going to run. So I think he's and again he's most of his snaps outside corner. So I think he's the guy that I would take. If I click on Cisse, I think he's more of a zone corner. So he's more of a zone corner. So in this scenario, I think Hood is the guy I would take. But I will probably refer to Shane and Kev's draft guide later in the year when they've done their analysis.
And then we come back at pick 48, which obviously we've picked up from Dallas here. Which is via the? Is this via the Jets? Yeah, it's via the Jets trade earlier, wasn't it?
This is from the
Quinn
Williams trade. So yeah. So if you look at who we've got so far and what we've addressed in our kind of your picks, so we've got a wide receiver, we've got a defensive tackle, we've got a cornerback. So what did I say that we needed to improve on? If we've secured the free agent linebacker, then Anthony Hill Jr. might be a luxury here, but it's definitely in play for me. And again, a player I like. But again, I'm not sure we can pass on the value of Caleb Lomu here as that guard prospect that we want to bring in. And I think as much as Shane will hate us drafting a high offensive lineman, I think I'd go with the offensive lineman here.
I think Shane has been quite open in the fact that he does think that we need to build on the trenches and build on the offensive line. He's just against taking offensive linemen in the top 10 because I think he's just been burnt too many times. Shane has not had much luck in his short tenure as a Giants fan with high drafted offensive linemen. But yes. Okay, so yeah, Caleb Lomu, absolutely fine with that. I mean, if we do that, that's going to finalise the draft. It's going to run through the remaining picks. We did not pick up a third round draft pick, mainly because of the fact that the Jets didn't have one, so there wasn't one to pick up there. If you look at the grade from PFF is an A. They gave us a D+ for Carnell Tate, but that's because PFF rank it on where their rankings are. Obviously, we scrolled down to pick up Carnell Tate, but B- for Caden McDonald, A for Colton Hood, A for Caleb Lomu. We're addressing 4 areas of need there as well in wide receiver, in the interior position at the defense, cornerback, and at guard. 4 picks within the top 50 as well there, with the fact that we traded number 2 for 7, 23, 48, and that round 2 in 2027. So I think you would be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, hopefully. Give me a grade in the chat or in the comments what you think of have I fixed the Giants with my all my decisions here today, and get in touch with my as the GM, Craig. I'm making you my director of communications. How does that sound?
Yeah, absolutely fine. I'd be throwing all the hype out on the social medias on those. To be honest, this is something that Kev and I have done for the last 2 seasons in the pre-season. I don't think we've ever tried to do or just after the post-season, should we say. I don't think we've ever done one during the season. I think it's a very, very good idea to do, especially with the bye week being so late. We actually have a better idea of where the roster is. And personally, I think what we've gone through this evening is there is some stuff that will happen. There is some stuff. We always seem to hit on a few things. I think Javon Holland was a player that we had earmarked during the Fix the Franchise in the postseason. So we'll keep an eye on it and see how it goes. But there will be there's a B mark there, so we'll take that.
I'll take
but I think, yeah, there's definitely an opportunity to revisit this at the end of the season and maybe look at if there's anything that would change, or if there is anyone that maybe has taken a dive, or anyone that really solidifies themselves as being someone to keep, and then obviously look at readdressing where we think the draft is. But no, I think that's really good. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have this evening. It's an hour and 35 minutes. Obviously, there is only the one show this week, so we can run a little longer. We try and make sure we don't give you too many long episodes on a two episode week. We will be back next Wednesday, so in 6 days' time, for our preview of the Commanders game, and maybe a little bit more in the terms of news and draft, or should I say bye-week shenanigans, hopefully with the return of a couple of the others. Aaron, anything to add before we disappear?
So yeah, one thing I forgot to mention about the game, anyone that hasn't seen it wants to see a highlight. One, in the caption that we've got down below, that Jackson Dart throw, ridiculous. Mahomesian, awesome throw. He believe it or not, he gets this pass off and completes it from this position. And secondly, on the Singletary touchdown, don't watch Singletary, watch Andrew Thomas on that touchdown.
Yes,
it's phenomenal.
Yes, yeah, that is a fair assessment. It's been another good one. Thank you, everyone in the comments, for getting involved as well. We've kind of been going through. It's always nice to see new names in there as well. Thank you for everyone for kind of sticking with us for this hour and 40-minute episode. As always, like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also hit the bell to be notified when we go live. If you aren't already, follow us on the socials at the bottom. Please do rate us on your podcast platform of choice. As Aaron always says, it has to be 5 stars, the Booker T number. And just as Darren's saying as well, get the likes, upvotes in, lads. The likes really do help us with the algorithm and help get our content in front of people. We are blessed to have a group of hardcore fans who do that every week. But if everyone who watches it, or at least gets to this bit, could do it, it would really mean the world to us. My thanks goes to Aaron for joining me, all of you in the comments for watching, anybody listening to this on our audio platforms. We are signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.